So how does Iowa not having Freeman change things?
Just if it would happen to you, the next man up, you got to be prepared for another team's best, right? You got to be prepared for someone to step up and fill that void. So, you prepare the same way because their style doesn't change. Obviously, he puts a burden on things just because the way he runs the floor, the way he plays out of ball screens, he can put the ball on the floor. He can do a lot of different things, and you just got to take the next guys, at their strengths and just be ready for it.
They can always really shoot, and that's what you got to be ready for most, right?
Yeah, more
their
than
tempo
anything.
And their shooting.
Well, it's more than just that. You can't turn the ball over and take bad shots and let them play in transition. When they get in transition, they are very dangerous. And anytime they have laws, you'll see, Fran really encourages them to get the ball moving, to get up the floor, to be aggressive, to be more aggressive. They're at their best when they're aggressive, shooting threes, driving the ball, making the right plays. Because they have so many different weapons, they have so many different guys that can drive it, so many different guys that can shoot threes. But they're just not a three-point shooting team. They're a team that can play off the bounce and can play off their actions.
Just what you've gotten lately from Jakari and CJ, how much has that sort of completed your team defensively, but also having those extra ball handlers?
Yeah, that having extra ball handlers helps us.
Yeah.
But we're not perfect in terms of our growth, and so I still think there's improvement there for both of those guys to keep guarding the basketball, but also contain it. We still had a couple possessions there where they just ripped and drove past us, in our last game. So just keep working, keep getting better. But they both have definitely helped us.
In November and December, there were a lot of they were pressuring the ball full court, but there were a lot of straight line drives that came off of that too. Did those guys adjust somehow?
They've just gotten better at it. They've just gotten better at it. You still got to put that kind of pressure at it. It still happens. It just doesn't happen as much.
Rewatching the IU game, did anything stand out just from what you guys need to shore up?
I just thought, like I said after the game, they were quicker to the ball in the first half, more than anything. We don't get a high volume of threes, but we get some good threes that we don't make. That really, we make it hard on ourselves when we don't make some threes. You're trying to generate some things, but you're also just trying to generate, quality possessions and quality shots. You're just not hunting out one particular shot. So that's what kind of jumps to me offensively. We took care of the basketball. We did a better job rebounding in the second half. I thought they played well. I thought our inability to contain the dribble and closeouts, really helped Indiana. They got us in some rotations, and when they did, we forced some turnovers, and we got us in some rotations, and then when they could complete passes, they broke us down, and we just got to do a better job of containing that, but also doing a better job of getting back into help too. So like that, when the ball's living in the paint too much, that's going to hurt us. It's going to hurt anybody, but it's really going to hurt us.
You guys have had a little home stretch here, and now this is a month where there will be some pretty significant road games coming up. And how much does the defensive improvement that this team has made factor into those?
Well, you hope it factors into it. Like each game is a new game, right? And so I think, it starts with our offense. So if we take good shots and we take care of the basketball, we're going to keep setting our defense, and that really helps against a team like Iowa, because the more they can get in transition, the better it is for them. So I think that's where it starts with, and then just recognizing what they're trying to do in their actions, like who they're trying to get the ball to, what they're trying to, manipulate. We're all trying to manipulate each other into thinking one thing to really create another. So they are always looking to drive and then play off of those drives, whether it's back cuts or kind of dribble-ats and a lot of different actions. Then once it hits the five, they play off of stuff, they'll run cutters off the baseline. They run good stuff, and so we're going to have to be ready to defend and ready to contain the dribble, but also be able to play without fouling. Sometimes it's difficult when you cut the way they cut.
What does Trey need to do better in his screening?
Come set, be legal. You can't get him there at the end.
Because we're all fellas the other night.
No question.
But isn't that sort of college basketball now? Guys moving into screens to move out of the screens on their roles.
You're thinking backwards, or you can't think backwards. You don't coach somebody else's team. So, like, if he's moving on a screen, get it corrected. If he's not moving on a screen, then they need to get it corrected. But we can't bitch at him when they're right. You know what I mean? You got to correct that. You got to come set. The thing that he's trying to do is get Braden open, which from a functionality standpoint, we work on screening a lot, and we work on the angles of a screen a lot, and that's important. But it's not worth his third and fourth.
You see a lot of those guys, they'll lean into screens.
No doubt.
Like, is it the feet that have to be set, or does it have to be feet to
It's everything. When you have contact, you got to give somebody a step if they don't see you. If they see you, you don't, but you always have to be set. You always have to be legal. And what happens is it gets poorly officiated, and then you like go tit for tat. And you're like, well, they were able to move. And then you just let each call stand by itself. Was he moving on those screens? Yes. Stay in the game.
Well, I'm just trying to understand the rule. Are you allowed to, like, lean in?
You're going to be here a long time. Yeah.
I got all day.
Yeah.
So do you have to be perfectly straight up head to toe? Or do you have to just have your feet set?
You got to be legal. You got to be set. You can't have anything moving when there's contact.
Nothing can move.
And then it varies from night to night.
Yeah. I didn't create this. This isn't like a family foundation.
There are 97 fouls in every college basketball game, it would seem.
Right.
Volume of
All right, I'm done.
Volume of 3-point attempts has kind of been low in the Big Ten.
Yes.
Is that other team doing stuff?
That's the other team, yeah. They're just not going to let certain guys shoot the basketball. But what it creates a lot for us is what we've talked about from day one. Now Braden's got to play. And so when you see Braden go 11 for 21, that is a good thing for us, because now we're not forcing things. Like, he's getting to his shots because they're saying they're going to give you that pull up versus coming in for the spray out three or the dump down or whatever it might be. So he just needs to keep staying aggressive. And if they want to defend him as a scorer, he'll be a passer. If they want to defend him as a passer, he's got to be a scorer for us. As we all know, there's normally a balance to that within a game.
As a head coach, how early does your process switch to the next team after Friday's game?
Yeah, they go to it before. So like Terry didn't have the Indiana game, Paul did. So Terry's on that and he's ready to go. So, PJ watches the game before and then he jumps on it. Like, when you split it, you don't have to watch whole games. So it's like, hey, I watched these 4 games. In reality, they watched 2, right? So from a time standpoint, you can get to some things quicker. So, like, it probably takes from an offensive standpoint, if you go watch 4 games and you're watching half the game, like, that's about 5 hours right there. So you can get to it pretty quick and get through it. And so a lot of people aren't going to maneuver you when you, like, watch their last 4 games. Like, they might go do us in a couple things different, but they're not going to, it is what it is, right? It is what it is. Like, I'm always trying to cut my practice down. February has started or whatever, but I want to work on other things. Like, well, why don't you practice? Why don't you do this? Well, I'm trying to cut things down. We've been going since June, but it's more from a mental thing than a physical thing, just to be able to understand things. But when you get traditional, like we're traditional to Iowa, and Michigan State's traditional to them, just like Brad Underwood, like after you've gone 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years, people will be a little bit different, whatever, but there's a lot more similarities than there is differences from year to year, because you are who you are as a coach, more than likely.
Speaking of that grind, does Jakari and CJ both sticking around that 20-minute mark kind of help with the freshman wall, physically, mentally?
Yeah, I think so. And what we go through is really not for them as much as it is for the people that play 30 to 35 minutes a game. So we really worry about those guys. But it's good for those guys to have complete days off. I think sometimes, like, when you keep them here and you do things but you don't practice, they need that day off. So, like, anytime we can get, like last week, we went 2 days off, practice, day off, 2 days of practice. And then you get into the rust of things, right? You get into things like, we weren't as sharp because of that. I don't know. That's hard to quantify, right? But no, you're really getting it to this point to where if you get, like, considerable time off, like, those 2 days really help. They really help. But we look, the guys with fast twitch muscles can recover a lot quicker than the other guys. So like Fletch, Trey Kaufman, like those guys aren't going to recover the same as some guy who's a sprinter.
Do you have to tell them not to come to the gym on those days, or some people you have to just go home and do something?
I allow them to do what they want because each guy goes through a different, approach to things, especially someone who doesn't play versus someone who plays a little versus someone who plays a lot. I think it's a lot different. And then you throw in who's a freshman, who's a sophomore, who's a junior, who's a senior. Like you grow into your habits, and some people don't like it to be away like that. They want to come in and at least shoot and do something. Other people need to get away. So you just allow it to be, on their own.
So kind of going back to December, Jakari wasn't shooting well. CJ seemed like he struggled a little bit with backcourt pressure, was getting sped up a little bit. How important can it be for young players to overcome struggles early in the season and then come out of it on the back end pretty good?
Yeah, it's great. You're going to struggle with something. Mm-hmm. Everybody is. And when you do, now you got to, how you work through it is really your growth as a player. And so, I think CJ missed 10 straight shots after he made those three against Alabama. Jakari was, struggled from three. But it's different when that's what you're good at. Mm-hmm. So if you're good at something that you're struggling, you have a reference point to go back to and say, hey, I shot 44% from three in high school. I've made 7 threes in a high school game before. I've done this, I've done that. So now it really helps you. Like if you come into a situation and you've always stunk at defense and you still stink at defense, it's really hard to feel like, hey, this is going to start working out here for me, because you've never been any good at it. And so it's hard to get them like, okay, we gotta learn some things. We got to get a defensive foundation. We got to remotely know if your man's in the same county as you are, like things of that nature. Just like, hey, we got to build some confidence here, but if you don't do anything well, it's really hard to build confidence, really hard for me to play you. So both of those guys have a good mentality about guarding. They understand what's going on. Now it's learning the ins and the outs of things. Now it's learning the nuances. And more than anything, the hardest thing for them to do is just beat in the half court against a good player where they have to recover and they can keep them in front of them. That's the hardest thing. Handling pressure and containing the dribble are the two biggest adjustments normally for a young player.